I sign up for the Daily 202. It comes to me from the Washington Post. It's a kind of a compilation of everything that's in the paper that day. And the first thing I go to is Olivier Knox's column, because he's usually spot on. And he joins us now here on the Big 89. Reading from his piece, few things testify more to the Donald Trump's total remaking of the Republican Party than this. Many of the traits that made Mike Pence an appealing, even necessary running mate in 2016 are now damaging, perhaps fatal, political liabilities for the former VP. I remember the old days. He was a governor. He was a congressman. He was a guitar player. He was an indie talk show host. And then he was Trump's running mate in 2016 and seemed to be the perfect guy. Well, he's not perfect any longer, and that's an understatement. Let's start there with Olivier Knox from the Post. Olivier, I guess it's tough to buy back a soul that you sold years ago.
Mercifully, I wouldn't know.
So what positions is Pence on the wrong side of in 2023?
Well, Mike Pence has a lifelong record as a rock-ribbed conservative Republican. He was a very conservative governor of Indiana. He was a very conservative House member. And those things are part of what made him so appealing to Donald Trump in the 2016 cycle. But he has not moved off a lot of his positions, but the Republican Party sure has. So Mike Pence is a career foreign policy hawk. The Trump voter part of the Republican Party wants no part of that. They do not share his support for Ukraine, notably. Another aspect is he's a devout free marketer. It's come up a few times in the early phases of his presidential campaign. He talks about how politicians should not be pressuring or attacking the private sector to take particular political positions. Well, unfortunately for him, the party's moved on from that too. And in fact, Republicans have been very aggressively saying that politicians should pressure or punish corporations that don't adopt a certain political line. So those are two core parts of Mike Pence's political identity that they were great in 2016, and now they're a total liability, which partly explains why he's in a pickle now and polling in single digits.
So Trump said recently, I think he reiterated this, that if elected, he's going to stop all aid to Ukraine. That's it. Cut everything off. I mean, even if the 20 to 30% of the Republican base love that, I mean, I don't know, where's the other 80 or 70 or 80% of Republicans saying, hey, this is way off the grid and it should disqualify Trump and push Pence up the polling a little bit? What's going on?
Well, in the last year and a half, I guess, Republicans have gone from supporting Ukraine to the closer to the Trumpy position, which is opposing both military and economic aid to Ukraine. The percentages are they vary fairly widely from poll to poll on just how muscular the opposition to aid to Ukraine really is. But you can see it creeping up. Every time the House of Representatives takes a vote on aid to Ukraine, you can see the number of no votes piling up. It's nowhere near enough to cancel that aid. But remember who votes in primaries. It's the party loyal who vote in primaries. It's not the sort of interested by politics, maybe once every 4-year person. It's the people who are, for whom that's a significant part of their identity. And in that population, hostility to aid to Ukraine is much more significant than in the party at large.
And that's why that issue and others, why 70% of GOP voters kowtow to the very loud Trumpian 30%.
That's a big part of it. Again, I mean, if you were trying to get through the primaries, there's about 25% of Republicans, according to a recent poll, who are sort of in the never Trump category. And then you have some persuadables, but he has a real hold on an awful lot of Republican voters. Now, can that change and change dramatically? Of course it can. Who knows what happens if we get months of coverage of his efforts to overturn the election? Who knows what happens if, say, he gets convicted? We just don't. Those are big variables. Those are very big variables. But as we speak here today, he's got a pretty firm hold on the party.
couple days ago, Pence said anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. And yet, more recently, he's essentially said through not only some comments, but some social media postings, that really January 6th wasn't Trump's fault. He was being led around by crackpot lawyers. Does that wash?
Yeah, I noticed that shift as well. He was extremely firm back in March when he told the Gridiron news media dinner that history would judge Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump's reckless language put him and his wife and children in danger in the Capitol on January 6th. You have to tune this in day and day out to see where he lands. I just noticed that he's selling campaign merchandise, quoting Donald Trump, something that Donald Trump apparently said when Mike Pence said he would not join the effort to overturn the election. Trump responded, "You're too honest." Mike Pence is now selling hats and T-shirts in his campaign store with the "Too Honest" logo on them.
Yeah.
But we have to wait and see. I mean, one of the challenges in a campaign like this is you'll see the message folks trying to fine tune, trying to find the right pitch, trying to find the right language. I should note that we talked about his hawkishness and we talked about his free marketeering. Obviously, his single biggest liability is that he broke twice with Donald Trump. One, in refusing to overturn the election, and two, in testifying to the grand jury that's now indicted Donald Trump, and in providing that grand jury with his contemporaneous notes.
Yeah. Who do white and evangelicals go for now that Donald Trump has turned the Supreme Court their way? They've got that. But Pence has been their longtime hero. Not that Pence is going to make it into a serious contest with Donald Trump, but have they thrown any support at all to Mike Pence?
Very little to date. Actually, Republicans generally have shown Mike Pence very little love, something that Donald Trump happily pointed out on his Truth Social website yesterday. No, I think one of the candidates to watch, I mean, I do think it's early. We've got 5 months before the first ballots get cast. We've got the first debate, the Republican debate, late this month. One thing to watch is Tim Scott. Tim Scott has made faith really the centerpiece of his campaign. As people get disenchanted with Ron DeSantis, who for the longest time was the candidate not named Trump, watch to see what happens with Tim Scott's support, and in particular, watch what happens to Tim Scott's support after the debate. Because it'll be, for a lot of Americans, it'll be their introduction to him. And I think he's got a message that is pitched really directly to voters of faith.
And Pence has not made that debate stage in Milwaukee yet, has he?
No, we could be in a situation in which the party's most recent vice president does not make it to the debate stage.
History is being rewritten every single week, it seems like, Olivier.
It is. I mean, he's not horribly far off the number of donors. His polling, I think, might qualify him, but it's hard. It's been much harder going than if you'd told me in November of 2016 that Mike Pence would run for president in 2024 and would be polling in low single digits, I don't think I would have believed you.
Anything else going on in D.C. today?
Well, to quote Supertramp, at the height of their creative powers, it's a-raining again. Donald Trump, of course, is being arrested and arraigned at a federal courthouse. It's a bit anticlimactic after the actual indictment was unsealed. It's obviously an incredibly momentous moment. I realize this is his third indictment, not his first, but this is still enormously important. And it's the one that touches the most dramatic actions of Donald Trump. It is not hush money payments to a porn star to hide a sexual liaison. It is not the fight over the classified documents that he kept at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster. This is about his efforts to overthrow the election. So it's a much more serious, much more momentous, in some ways a lot more complicated. But this is really the big one.
Olivier Knox, thanks again. I enjoyed the reference to Supertramp especially.
I've got to try to please my audience.
I really do believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States again.
Well, that's Mike Pence. He's trailing this guy by, I don't know, 2 or 3%, somewhere in that area.
It's a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Well, when you break the law, you sometimes get charged. You have your day in court, though.